Welcome back to part 2 of our special congressional edition of the PODC Hill Report. We are picking up right where we left off on our post-police week coverage of Capitol Hill. Last week, we brought our cameras straight into the lawmakers to get answers on the protection of our law enforcement officers. Today, we are bringing you the rest of the exclusive hard-hitting interviews featuring a deep dive look into the legislation that the mainstream media completely ignores. Let me jump right back into our coverage on the Hill for part 2. I'm here with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. How are you doing today?
Good. Very happy to be on your show.
Great. I really would like to first say thank you for your service. I did not realize that you were a veteran.
I am. I was in the Air Force 5 years, active duty, 1 year in the Guard. I always joke that the Guard is one of the best kept secrets.
It is.
Yeah.
I was in the Marine Corps for 4.5. I should have stayed in.
Yeah.
It was a good time. So I appreciate your time. I know we're really busy with Police Week and everything, so I appreciate that. So one of the questions I'd like to know is, why is supporting law enforcement so important?
I think a lot of people don't realize how much law enforcement does outside of what they've seen on shows like Cops, and then also too, off of what press reports on. But there are a lot of officers that respond and deal with things that most people couldn't handle, and are responsible for, I think, a peaceful and civil society. I always like to see the videos where law enforcement officers are helping to save kids, etc. That happens actually quite frequently, unfortunately, in the Tampa Bay area, where you have a toddler that's choking. And I always try to reshare those videos, though, to show that there's a positive side of law enforcement, not this aspect that's really demonized and I think politicized in Congress and in the press. And so for us specifically, unfortunately, and every single legislator will tell you this, they might not go on record for it, but they'll tell it to you, that, as I'm sure you can imagine, we deal with all sorts of crazy sometimes, and law enforcement is the first organization we go to when we're having problems. So we thank you for what you do. I just wish more people would publicly have your back.
Well, thank you very much for your support. Now, with Police Week coming to an end, what does Police Week mean to you overall?
I think it's an acknowledgement and a show of respect for people that stand up, volunteer, and do something that honestly is quite selfless. I don't think y'all get paid enough. I think you deserve more respect. And if there was a way that we could help at the federal level, we would. But our show of support is doing the legislation that we've put on the floor in an effort to show solidarity with our law enforcement community. And then, I don't know if you guys know this, but my mother's older brother was a cop for many years. And so we know firsthand kind of the stories that come home with y'all. And I think for us specifically, it's just a way of saying thank you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that very much. And the last question is the Mark Fischer Memorial Act. You are a co-sponsor. Why is that so important to get passed, especially if we can do it for Police Week?
Well, I think that there's a ton of bipartisan support for when you see over 100-something co-sponsors. Anytime that a piece of legislation has that, that's huge, especially on Capitol Hill, but also to, what these bills specifically do in being able to facilitate, protect, and encourage and represent and support the law enforcement community is incredibly important. But as you know, and for those people that are tuning in, different committees have jurisdiction over the legislation. And so right now we do know that it's been sent to Judiciary, and as a co-sponsor, I will be following up to see if I can put a little pressure and get them all through.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've been working hard with Congressman Bacon on this one, So we're hoping that we can get it passed.
I think if there's a time to do it, it's going to be now. And so it's just really cool, though, seeing organizations like you up here keeping eyes and ears on it and being such champions for the community.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I know you've been very busy with Police Week, and again, thank you very much. I'm here today with Congressman Tim Burchett out of Tennessee. Thank you for talking with me today, sir.
Thanks for having me.
The reason why I wanted to do this interview was talk to you about law enforcement. I know you're a champion of law enforcement. Why is it so important to support our local law enforcement?
Well, because without them, I think the wheels fall off. They're the ones that I talk about that run in when the rest of us run out. When I married my wife was a Navy widow, I guess you'd say. Her husband was a Master Chief on a Navy sub and died shortly after he got out of the Navy, but she was a widow and of course, and had a little baby girl. And I met her and married Kelly, of course, adopted Isabel a little later in life, but every time we'd be out, she and I would hang out, Isabel and I would, and take her to boosters, as we used to say, Brewsters, because she couldn't say her R's, and every time we'd hear a siren, I'd always say, honey, say a prayer. I said, because some friend of ours is getting ready to get in harm's way. And I mean that. And my daddy was an old World War II Marine, law enforcement.
I'll simplify to him.
Yes, sir. Daddy was all about law and order and the police. Daddy was the dean of student conduct at UT. I can always remember. I remember this story. I was about 4 or 5, and I was the baby of the family. And there was this guy behind us, and sitting at the game, and he was drunk, and he had a cowbell. And so they used to they made him quit bringing cowbells to UT games, I guess in the late 60s, early 70s. It was the last game they let him do that. This guy took the Lord's name in vain. And my daddy said, hey, there are ladies down here. Y'all need to watch your language. And I'll be dadgum if that guy didn't spill his drink on my dad. And my mom, knowing what was getting ready to go down, she pushed us all out the aisle and was going up the steps. And about that time, this UT police officer coming down. His dad was Dean Burchett, and nobody messed with Dean Burchett.
That's
and
funny.
I can always remember as I was a little boy, I was like, hey, I want to see what's going to happen. Mom's like, get on out of here. And so, and Daddy kicked their ass, all 3 of them. And the UT police arrested them and took them out. And, you know, law enforcement has just always been there for my family. And when it's not just the 911, but just around, there was a bunch of roughnecks at a ball game, and my sweet little mama, after we'd lost my dad, was these guys were talking ugly, and Mama didn't need to be hearing that. She's a good Christian woman. She was 80. She was there to see her grandson play football, and I had not gotten there yet. By the time I got there, I found out what was going on, and the city police officer, he was an old roughneck, good guy, you know, law and order, and he saw what was going on with Miss Burchett, and he escorted those gentlemen out, and the other law enforcement heard it was my mama, and because Daddy had died, and this year we went on Christmas Day to Waffle House, and there he was eating by himself, and me and a buddy of mine who's a judge now is my best friend, and his family, and we all, there must have been 9
That's awesome.
of us, and we had him eat Christmas breakfast with us at Waffle House. And,
That's awesome.
But a million stories like that. It's just and
that's awesome.
And when Daddy died, he was Daddy was an old World War II Marine, and he said, buddy, he said, if they're going to do a motorcycle or something in front of my casket, he said, make sure it's American made. Japanese.
That's awesome.
And so I said, Daddy, I'll take care of that. And I said something to one of the city police officers in Knoxville, and they had switched to Harley Davidson's short time before that. And I'll be dadgummed. And Mama wanted to see Daddy one more time, and so I took her to the funeral home, and there was all of them. I think there might have been 12 officers that were motorcycle cops or officers, and when they brought Daddy's body out, they stood on both sides, and they stood at attention and saluted my daddy.
Yep.
And,
that's out of respect right there.
yes, sir. And of course they took him
Off you go.
to the thing, and I mean, it was huge. Daddy was a bigger than life kind of guy. You know, there's over 500 people at his funeral, and I dare say there was a lot of law enforcement.
I can see where you get it from then.
Yes, sir. And it's just always. And I tell the police officers up here, the Capitol Police, I said, I'm a little different than everybody else. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I actually want to go home to my wife and dad. And I said, can y'all let me do that? And they all joke about it, and they all know me. When
that's
we walk
awesome.
out, they holler at me across the street or whatever.
That's awesome.
So it's a good relationship.
Next question I have is, Police Week is 2 weeks away. And based on what you're talking about just now, what does Police Week mean to you coming up this week?
It means that the people that, I always think about the terrible pay, the terrible hours, and what we call on y'all to do every dadgum day. It's not a thing that it's not just a week. It's, we have these Veterans Day, but, every day's a Veterans Day to me, because my dad served, Mama was in the civilian Air Corps, flew an airplane during the Second World War, but she's just a little country girl. But every day is that, and that's one day or 1 week or 1 month that the rest of the country needs to pay attention. And unfortunately, I'm afraid they don't. We've seen police officers demonized. And I notice that a lot up here in D.C., the morale. And I always walk by them, and they see the pin and they know I'm a congressman or I'm in my Carhartt jacket and they can spot me a mile away. But I always want to make sure that they know that I appreciate them. I walk in parades a lot, which is neither here nor there, but and there's always the police officer, the one guy who drew the short end of the stick and's got to hold traffic back. And I always walk over and get over and shake their hand and say,
"That's
hey,
awesome,
thank you, brother," because it is a thankless job, and and you get demoralized, and sometimes I don't think administrations. I sort of feel that way up in D.C. that a lot of these officers are not appreciated, maybe by their own administration, and these guys and gals that run police officers down, most of them they're 3 deep with their security detail, and to me that's just wrong, and that sends a wrong message to kids. Being from Knoxville, we don't have you can turn me loose in any dadgum neighborhood out there, and I'll guarantee you I know somebody. And I was at a good friend of mine had an event this weekend in, I guess you call it Knoxville's inner city or whatever, and we had an event, and police were there like they always were, but nobody was hurling insults at them. They were playing with the kids and talking to them, and doing what everybody would do in the South, and I think we've missed that somehow, and we've allowed these people. I don't care what party you're in. I just can't stomach it. It turns my stomach when I see people hurling insults at law enforcement. Because growing up, one of my best buddies, his daddy was just an old school officer, and he did his job. And we respected, and he was a respected part of the community. And when he died, I gave a speech on the House floor on him because he was our football coach, and it just was part of our community. And today we just don't do that, and that's unfortunate.
I agree. Oh no, that's okay. And on behalf of all
memories.
On behalf of all law enforcement, I'm retired after 25 years. Thank you, because actually just going out and saying thank you is more than a lot of people do, and trust me, the officers out there really appreciate it, especially the ones that, they're protecting you. My last question is, you're a co-sponsor of Protect and Serve Act. Why is that so important to get passed?
I think we've got to make sure that our law enforcement is protected and that they are thought of in our laws. It's a shame that we have to pass laws.
I agree with you.
To do that, but unfortunately, that's the society we live in today.
Yeah.
It's a very litigious society, and it's kind of like I sort of put it when I was mayor. Sheriff and I got together, and I found the money to in our budget for the plates for the officers, the high-powered rifle plates, ceramic, I believe they are, and we started talking about the cameras, and I don't want to be some trial lawyer's dream, and I said, but I think it would protect law enforcement more than it would protect the dirt bags. Dadgum if it didn't. Man, I'm telling you, every time one of those nuts would come in my office about how bad they were abused, and I said, well, let me get over the sheriff, let's review the camera, the footage. They go, you got footage of that? And then they immediately whisper to their attorney, and then they'd say, hey, we got to come back and talk about this a little later.
Yeah, it benefits law enforcement a lot.
It does, and I say it protects the citizens, but it also protects law enforcement. I worry a great deal about that, because I see, y'all have great attorneys, but sometimes they're just not as trained and as well. You can't afford the hot shot attorney,
right?
And they're looking at a big price tag because they're going to sue the county, and
correct,
they're going to step on your ass to get to it. And
I agree.
And so anyway,
all right.
Talk too much.
No. I mean, we could keep going. I know you're really busy. I appreciate your time. And I can't end without asking. Obviously, one of my favorite social media with you is your donkeys, and the last one I seen, you were feeding them peppermint. So, on a lighter side, how are the donkeys doing?
The donkeys are great. When I left Knoxville this week, they always standing by the gate looking at me like, "Where's my dadgum peppermint?" and I always go to fancy restaurants, and that's kind of my running joke. I go, "Is that a baby rat?" And they'll go, "What?" And I'll reach in and grab a big double handful of peppermints, And but I do, and I got this, and so I've got so many of those. I get so many handfuls. My wife's got this pewter bowl by the door, and it's full of peppermints. It's not for people. It's when I go out to the barn or go to the field. And now the horses look for it. They're like, "Where's that skinny white kid with the peppermints?" And they're just nuzzling and they're pushing me around, push around everybody else to get to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Horse or donkey whisperer, but they're great.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I know you got to get going.
That wraps up our special two-part look into the current battles taking place in Washington. The decisions being made in those halls will impact law enforcement for years to come, and we are going to keep tracking these bills every single step of the way. A massive thank you to all the members of Congress who sat down with us.